Thank you, everyone. So, Axel, I think I'm going to begin our meeting now. Thank you, everyone, for showing up, for making sure your systems were working. And welcome to day 2 of our Standing Committee meeting. So yesterday we opened item 12, but had not concluded. So I will be starting with item 12. Before I do so, I will note that I've gone quickly through the active users list, and I recognize that we have participation from all of the Standing Committee member parties, and so we definitely have quorum. So thank you, Standing Committee members, for your timely attendance at this meeting. And so with my good morning or good afternoon or good evening to everyone, I will first start by seeing if the Secretariat has any logistical announcements or updates to provide us, and then I will reopen the floor for discussion of item 12 on the collaboration with other conventions. So Secretariat, over to you first, please.
Thank you so much. Good day, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Yes, the Secretariat has a few announcements. Hélène, if you wish to take the floor, please.
Few housekeeping issues to raise. It's just a reminder for colleagues that, again, this session will be recorded and we want to make sure that everyone is okay with it. For the sake of time, I will not repeat the little introduction of Kudo. We're assuming that most of the people are now familiar with it. And just a reminder that for the colleagues who are not able to join the Kudo platform, they can follow the streaming on YouTube. And I think the Standing Committee Chair will mention that, but we'll start with agenda item 12 because that's where we left off yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. Excellent. So I will then turn the committee's attention to SC 73 Doc 12 on cooperation with other biodiversity-related conventions. We had 2 interventions at the close of our session yesterday from the Bahamas and Israel, but I know there were other parties and members who wished to speak. So I will open the floor first to members of the committee who wish to comment on document 12. And I see a request from Peru. So I will pass the floor to Peru, please. And that will be followed by Indonesia. Peru, you have the floor.
Sí, muchas gracias, señora presidenta. En el marco del convenio sobre la diversidad biológica, debemos acordar un conjunto, ¿no?, de objetivos, metas e indicadores basados en ciencia a través de un proceso amplio y muy dinámico, ¿no?, de discusión donde la mayoría de las partes de las CITES, que son también partes del CDB, ya estamos participando. Necesitamos medir el progreso hacia la conservación, restauración y uso sostenible de todos los componentes de la biodiversidad, ¿no? Este es un trabajo arduo, pues buscamos poner fin a los principales incentivos que fomentan la pérdida de la biodiversidad, así como garantizar el cumplimiento y la rendición de cuentas a través de la definición de indicadores convincentes, pero a la vez realistas, ¿no? En ese sentido, el Perú, como país megadiverso y centro de origen, participa activamente en las negociaciones del Convenio sobre Diversidad Biológica, siendo
Peru participates and
coincidiendo en que es relevante visibilizar y hacer tangible esta contribución. Por ello, resaltamos la importancia de generar mayores sinergias entre convenios para poder concretar resultados de mayor impacto. Agradecemos a la Secretaría por la preparación del documento 12 presentado ante el Comité Permanente. Sin embargo, coincidimos con lo señalado en la sesión de ayer por Israel, ¿no? y no estamos de acuerdo con la creación de este grupo de trabajo, pues vemos con dificultad su funcionamiento y con preocupación los aportes que podrían hacer a nombre de las partes, ¿no? Considerando lo complejo y dinámico de las discusiones que se están llevando ahora mismo en el marco del CDB. En tal sentido, apreciaremos que podamos explorar otras opciones con miras a que la Secretaría CITES pueda contar con mayores insumos de las partes y observadores para sus intervenciones en el marco del Convenio sobre la Diversidad Biológica. Muchas gracias, señora presidenta.
Thank you, Peru. I will turn now to Indonesia, please. Indonesia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Indonesia supports the establishment of working group which would be given a task to provide inputs to the negotiation on a post-2020 global biodiversity framework on behalf of the parties. Through its work on the conservation and sustainable use of species, CITES has a pivotal role of ensuring that no species of endangered flora and fauna become subject to unsustainable exploitation. In that regard, as one of biodiversity related to conventions, CITES should positively contribute to the post-2020 global biodiversity framework. As participants of two consultation workshops of biodiversity-related convention hosted by Switzerland in 2019 and early 2021, Indonesia stands ready to join to the working group. And at the same time, we also welcome the participation of standing committee members and parties to the group to ensure its inclusivity. Given the urgency and fast-moving negotiations in Convention on Biological Diversity or CBD, Indonesia agrees with the Secretariat's view that it is difficult to follow Rule number 20 of the Rules of Procedure for the establishment and work arrangement of this working group. However, Indonesia would like to emphasize that it should not be considered as a precedent for the future. Furthermore, in order to ensure that the working group could produce inputs in timely manner to catch up with ongoing CBD process, Indonesia is of the view that document number 10 should explicitly set a clear and realistic timeline for submitting CITES inputs. For example, before the third meeting of the open-ended working group of CBD. And last but not least, to assure transparency of the works carried by this working group, inputs submitted to the CBD should be reported to the 74th meeting of the Standing Committee and also made available on CITES website. Thank you.
Thank you, Indonesia. I see a request from Canada and Ethiopia, and then I will turn to the Secretariat, as I believe the Secretary General wanted to offer some clarifications. So I will start first with Canada.
Good morning, and thank you, Madam Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of the North American region, and I would like to express that our region supports the mandate of this important intersessional working group as proposed by the Secretariat, and supports that it should report to the 74th meeting of the Standing Committee. We would like to note the excellent work accomplished by the Secretariat to the CBD consultation process to support the development of a post-2020 global biodiversity framework and the related initiatives. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Canada. And I had earlier had a request from Ethiopia, but I'm not sure if Ethiopia still wishes to take the floor. In the interim, perhaps I will turn to the Secretary General. You wanted to make a comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Firstly, it's a more of a housekeeping problem that we're having with the English translation. I think that there was perhaps not a full translation of the intervention from Peru, and I understand that right now there is no English YouTube channel working at the moment. I just wanted to alert you to that we might have to have Peru repeat the statement that they made, because I've just been advised of the situation with English. We'll check back and see if that has been fixed. On my comment, I just wanted to and thank it for all the inputs that we have received so far, and just to mention that and thank you for the congratulations that you have made towards the Secretariat, because we have been working very closely with CBD and also in these meetings. But just to also remark that after the paper was written, we've also heard back. We've had other work with the CBD and with other conventions, participating in some later meetings, where we have been told that it is imperative to be able to ensure that other conventions, other biodiversity-related conventions in particular, are on board with the framework, and ensure that there is a role for the different biodiversity related conventions to play. And this is why we are suggesting that there would be the possibility of having this working group, and ways in which we can ensure that the CITES parties are participating fully in this process of developing the 2020 biodiversity framework. I just wanted to say that lately, in the meetings, it's very much being suggested that there should be more participation from the parties of other biodiversity related conventions to ensure that everybody is contributing. Thank you. I'm going to check again about the English translation and get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. I see Ethiopia has returned, so I will turn now to Ethiopia, please. Is the colleague from Ethiopia, it looks like there's a bit of a technical problem. Ethiopia, Daniel, it looks like you have the floor. Okay. Thank you.
Sorry for the technical problem. Could you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We support the engagement and then the contribution of CITES toward the development of post-2020 biodiversity framework. We also support, under paragraph 7, the proposed lists of representatives from each regions, and we also support the mandate given to the Secretariat, and then also the proposed representative list. However, we would like to request if there is still a room to add one or more representative, especially from Africa region, which we realize the contribution, it makes the contribution of CITES more effective and then productive. We support Morocco to represent us, but still we feel to add one or more representative from Africa if there is a room. This is the question we want to raise. Thank you.
Thank you, Ethiopia. So you can release your mic. Okay, so my list is growing. I am still focusing right now on members of the committee. I've heard mixed views about the formation of a working group. As I understood it from the Secretariat when I had a brief conversation with the Secretariat, is the hope here is to have a group of parties that can support the Secretariat given the sort of rapidly evolving global biodiversity framework in the CBD. So in response to one of the comments, I don't imagine that this working group, if it is indeed formed, will be focusing on developing new or from the ground ideas, but rather be sort of reacting to some of the opportunities for input and assisting the Secretariat by providing a more of a view across some, interested parties. In this respect, I think because I note that Peru and Israel were providing different ways of trying to give the Secretariat that party support they were looking for, and so those are options. Israel was suggesting a smaller group. Peru was suggesting exploring different options. The option that the Secretariat put forward was this smaller intersessional working group, although I see also some interest from parties to join that. But I think perhaps it does need to be a little bit clarified that given the status of the negotiations within the CBD, it's more about being able to provide good advice to the Secretariat to support them and support bringing in the CITES perspectives on issues like the development of indicators that may include indicators of progress that utilize data found in CITES fora, for example. So I have quite a list of speakers. I see Congo is on, so I will turn to Congo as a member of the Standing Committee.
Thank you, Madam. We have been a member of CBD from some time now, and we welcome the work that CITES is doing in order to cooperate with the CBD. With that in mind, in 2002, we developed a national action plan on biodiversity, which was amended in 2015 and 16. What we wanted to do was develop a national strategy on biodiversity. That is why it is our view that we do need to have this working group. Since there are focal points for CBD in most countries in the sub-region, we would have liked to have the Standing Committee make a recommendation. We would like the Standing Committee to suggest that the focal points for CBD in the region be involved in working with the working group that we are discussing. That is our view. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Congo. It looks like we have our translation back, so maybe I will turn the floor back to Peru to see if you would like to repeat some of the key points of your intervention. So Peru, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta. Bueno, comentarles que en el
Thank you, Madam Chair. What we wanted to say is that we have to work with CBD to work on goals, objectives, and indicators that are science-based. This is a very broad-based and dynamic process. Most parties that are also parties to CBD are already involved in that whole process. We need to find a way of assessing our progress towards the sustainable use of biodiversity. This is a major undertaking. What we're trying to do is actually do away with those incentives that lead to biodiversity loss. We want to ensure that we have accountability through convincing yet realistic indicators. In this respect, Peru is actively involved in CBD's work, and we see that Goal 4 is the one of direct relevance to CITES. It is through Goal 4 that we will be able to make a significant contribution to that work, and will be able to ensure that we can make a tangible and visible contribution. We do think we need to ensure there are good synergies among conventions in order to get the best results possible. We would like to thank the Secretariat for the work done on document 12, which has been presented to the Standing Committee. But we would like to say that we agree with the point raised by Israel yesterday. We do not see any need for this working group. We see some difficulties in how it would actually work, and we're not sure what contribution it would be able to make to this process on behalf of the parties that are involved in these negotiations. We have to bear in mind how complex and dynamic these discussions are, and they are already underway within the CBD framework. Given all of this, we would like us to look into other options open to the Secretariat that would enable it to get major inputs from parties and observers to CITES in order to work with the CBD in the future. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Peru. I will continue with interventions. I see Switzerland, and after which I will open the floor to observer parties. So Switzerland, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. After your explanations, what the input to the Secretariat can and should be in the future months, I share the concerns expressed by Israel and Peru, and I don't think we can now form a large working group because of the complexity and the fast-moving target we are in front of. And it might be helpful to just include the chairs of the scientific committees, because what we will be discussing, what the input will be, can the input of these two chairs through maybe consultation with their members could be quite helpful and would contribute to the input that CITES can give to this topic. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Switzerland. So I will now turn to accepting requests for the floor from parties. So I have a request from Chile that's longstanding. So I will start with Chile. I will then turn to the EU, followed by Georgia. Okay, we're continuing to see some challenges here. And I hope everyone's checked their permissions, I believe. I think you can also refresh your screens. So perhaps I will try and see if we have some luck with Georgia, and then turn back to our two colleagues from the EU and Chile. So Georgia, let's see. There we go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, we would like to thank the Chair of the Standing Committee and the Secretariat for their efforts on this issue. We consider cooperation with other biodiversity-related conventions as extremely important for CITES, as well as generally conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity. This would certainly lead us to greater impact. Therefore, we would agree with the suggested way forward. However, we also consider that deeper involvement of all CITES authorities in development of the post-2020 global biodiversity framework is necessary, especially at the national level, as directed by the Decision 1823. It is important that the CITES scientific and management authorities are involved in the ongoing meetings of the subsidiary body on scientific, technical, and technological advice, and the subsidiary body on implementation, and upcoming meetings of the open-ended working group and the conference of parties. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Georgia. I will turn next to, let's try Cambodia, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I will be very brief. Concerning the cooperation with the CBD Convention, Cambodia would like to congratulate and appreciate the Secretariat for actively communicating on behalf of the parties and participate in various meetings and consultations, and had provided valuable comments to the post-2020 global biodiversity framework. I think the Standing Committee should stand ready to provide input on behalf of the party in the final state of the negotiation on the post-2020 global biodiversity framework. Cambodia therefore supports the idea of putting in place an intersectional working group to deal with the fast-moving nature of the negotiation in the aim of achieving the role of the CITES Convention and demonstrating the value of CITES to the development of the framework. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Cambodia. I will see now if our colleagues from Chile and the EU have had success. So I will first turn to Chile to hear your intervention, and then I will you, and we will continue to try with Chile. So the EU, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hope you can hear me well. That's great. So, like others who spoke before us, I would like to start by thanking the Secretariat for their engagement in this challenging process so far, and also for providing very detailed information on this in the annex to document 12. As far as we can tell, this has been very helpful also for other participants in the CBD negotiations, for clarifying how our convention works and what it can and cannot contribute to the future global biodiversity framework. I would also like to echo Georgia in emphasizing the continued need for CITES and CBD focal points at national level to coordinate, as the COP also stressed in its decision, to which our colleague from Georgia referred. As we see it, this remains absolutely key. Like Israel, Peru, and now also Switzerland, we are not convinced at this point of the need to establish an additional working group. The process of these negotiations towards the new biodiversity framework, it is a challenging and multi-layered one. And it's rather unclear to us how the outcome of any such working group discussions would actually feed back into this process. It also seems to us that for the working group to report back to the 74th meeting of this committee would be quite late, in the sense that there would only be a few weeks then before the start of the CBD COP, which is expected to adopt the global framework. And we would also have some more specific problems with the draft mandate and with the proposed composition of the group. But perhaps it would make more sense to come back to that later. For the time being, as I said, we would prefer to rely on the Secretariat to continue delivering the service, and perhaps we can also pick up on some of the suggestions that have already been made as to how the additional support which the Secretariat is apparently looking for, how this could be provided, be it through the chairs of the scientific committees, as Israel and Switzerland have suggested, or in some other practical way. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, EU. I will continue to seek interventions from countries. So I see Chile is now on the screen. So I will turn to Chile, which will be followed by Brazil and then the United States.
Greetings, Madam Chair. Can you hear me? Indeed. I gather you can hear me. Thank you. I would like to say that I agree with the statement made by Peru and others. The negotiations are already underway. We therefore feel that what we need to do is consider other ways of approaching this issue of providing support to CITES, along lines suggested by Switzerland, for instance. There is support available in the scientific committees, AC or PC. That would be one possibility. At this stage, it seems that it's rather late in the day to establish a working group. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chile. So I will then turn to Brazil, followed by the United States, and then Gabon. So I would ask the floor to be passed to Brazil, please.
I don't know if can you hear me or not?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Receive the translation? or may I say in English?
1 second, Brazil. Yes, Chile, we've received your input and your translation. So thank you very much. So you can release the mic, and we're turning now to Brazil.
Oh, okay, thank you once again, Madam Chair.
What I was...
There we go. Thank you, Brazil.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. First of all, I would like to congratulate the Secretariat for putting this document together. We salute the willingness of the Convention to contribute to the development of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. The linkages and synergies between CITES and the CBD are many and are obvious. They become even sharper at a time when a strategic plan as far-reaching as the GBF is under negotiation. And that last point is precisely what Brazil would like to highlight. The GBF is still in the works. The CBD subsidiary body on scientific, technical, and technological advice is meeting this very week to discuss, among other issues, aspects of the GBF. That being considered, we should bear in mind that references to specific parts of that document, such as goals, targets, and indicators, are still provisional and may change during the process. As for the setting up of an intersessional working group to provide inputs to the framework, Brazil agrees with Israel on the fact that there is too little time before the adoption of the document at CBD COP15, scheduled to take place in October, and would like to echo Peru regarding the difficulties for it to work properly and contribute to this GBF process in an effective manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. So next on my list is the United States, which will be followed by Gabon.
On behalf of the North American region, we'd like to emphasize some points. Consistent with long-standing U.S. position, the United States appreciates the work of the Secretariat and the representatives of the Standing Committee in raising the profile of CITES and continuing to seek appropriate and mutually beneficial cooperation with other biodiversity-related conventions. We continue to believe, however, that leveraging of synergies at the national level is where parties can be most effective and efficient. Further, we want to note that we want to ensure that continued cooperation with other biodiversity-related conventions, it can be, while minimizing the extent to which the coordination overextends the Secretariat's resources and the other core functions of the CITES committees, or could lead to activities that go beyond the scope and mandate of each convention. Lastly, we wanted to mention that we do support the formation of the working group, but are open to some of the other options mentioned, noting Israel. We supported many of the points made by Switzerland and the EU. And we did want to respectfully disagree with Chile, noting that the AC and PC are focused right now on that core work, and they are burdened right now due to the delays that were caused by COVID. We want to make sure that they maintain their focus. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, United States. And I think I'm starting to see some areas of congruence in terms of providing advice to the Secretariat, but perhaps in a slightly lighter form than what was originally proposed. So I will continue. I have Gabon, and then I will also open the floor to observers. So Gabon, please.
Oui, c'est bon, j'ai la parole. Merci.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Gabon would like to congratulate the Secretariat and the working group for the work that has been carried out. We recognise the relevance of cooperation between CITES and the CBD, given that the challenges and goals and the setting up of the global biodiversity framework have a direct impact and an indirect impact on CITES, because they link to the sustainable management of species. And in the case, most parties to CITES are currently involved in the work for this global diversity framework, and the work is well underway. It is important to encourage the management authorities of the parties to work with the focal points for the CBD to ensure that CITES objectives appear in the results of their national processes and to the framework that is being negotiated. So Gabon supports the position of parties that have spoken in this way: the European Union, Israel, Switzerland, Chile and Brazil. Nevertheless, if an intersessional working group were to be set up to contribute to the current negotiations, it would be worthwhile making sure that the group is not restricted just to members of the Standing Committee, but to be open to all in accordance with Article 17.1 of the Rules of Procedure of the Standing Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabon. So I will open the floor to observers as well. And I see the David Shepherd Wildlife Foundation to be followed by traffic.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
You can, okay. Ah, that's it, it's there. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of Animal Advocacy and Protection, Animal Welfare Institute, Born Free Foundation, Center for Biological Diversity, David Shepherd Wildlife Foundation, Defenders of Wildlife, Environmental Investigation Agency US and UK, Eurogroup for Animals, Fondation Franz Weber, Four Paws International, Humane Society International, Natural Resources Defense Council, Pan-African Sanctuary Alliance, Pro-Wildlife, and Species Survival Network. We are deeply concerned by the Secretariat's recommendation to form an intersessional working group with only limited participation to address issues relating to the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. In our view, adopting this recommendation would significantly limit transparency and participation of parties in the framework's negotiations. And in this respect, we would like to express our support for the comments of Israel, Peru, Switzerland, Chile, Gabon, and the countries that expressed concerns about the working group. Many CITES stakeholders are engaged in these negotiations and have expertise and relevant focal points. Given this interest and the importance of the negotiations, we consider that parties should continue to input individually through their focal points and not through an intersessional working group. However, if the Standing Committee decides to form such a group, we support Gabon, and it is imperative that it does so with an open process. Membership of any group should be open to all parties and observers in line with Rule 17 of the Standing Committee's Rules of Procedure. As we attempt to reverse the biodiversity crisis, transparency and stakeholder input are essential. IPBES has warned us that over 1 million species could go extinct and identified direct exploitation as one of the main drivers of extinction. We're in an era of pandemics, and unless we embrace transformative change, we can expect to experience a COVID-like event every decade or even less. The chair of the IPBES Biodiversity and Pandemics report told us that at a meeting in December. Unfortunately, the current post-2020 targets relating to wildlife trade, particularly Target 4, reflect business as usual, promoting legal, sustainable wildlife trade with the addition of minor safety regulations will not prevent the next zoonotic pandemic. Target 4 must match the level of risk we face from the trade and apply the precautionary principle. It is imperative that parties, indeed all of us, champion stronger language in the post-2020 framework, conveying a clear message to restrict commercial wildlife trade unless it is shown to be ecologically, biologically, and culturally sustainable, legal, well-managed, and presents no risk to human or animal health. Lastly, we are concerned that the proposed working group will only report on its activities at Standing Committee 74, which may not take place until after the next draft of the post-2020 framework has been agreed. Any working group formed should provide regular updates of its activities so that all CITES stakeholders are aware of the current status of its involvement in the negotiations. Thank you for giving me the floor, Madam Chair.
Thank you, David Shepherd, Wildlife Foundation, and I will turn to traffic, please.
Thank you, Chair. Traffic strongly encourages continued input by CITES parties in these final stages of the negotiations on the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, either individually through the Secretariat or through the intersessional working group proposed in this document, if the timeframes of the upcoming negotiations allow for meaningful input to be made. And in this regard, we would echo Indonesia's intervention about clear and realistic timelines being set for this work if it goes ahead. We note that the zero draft of the framework under negotiation now features for the first time targets related to wildlife trade, as well as a greater emphasis than in the past on sustainable use, in particular the role that sustainable and legal harvest, use and trade plays in both contributing to species conservation and providing multiple benefits for people reliant on use and trade in wild species. Traffic therefore hopes that parties will ensure that an ambitious but realistic framework can be agreed to with indicators that are consistent and harmonized with those that will be used in CITES. For example, while Target 4 of the Zero Draft refers to ensuring harvest, trade, and use of wildlife species at sustainable levels and that it's safe, we hope that robust indicators are also developed on reducing the illegal and unsustainable trade in wild species. We believe that the adoption of strong indicators for these targets is essential for measuring progress on the effective implementation of the framework. And without a robust monitoring framework for these targets, we will be doomed to repeat the results of GB05, which suggested that none of the 20 Aichi biodiversity targets would be fully met by the target date of 2020. Finally, Traffic also notes the concerns expressed by many during the negotiations over the additional reporting burdens that the monitoring framework may impose and the capacity needed for countries to effectively utilize it. We therefore call on parties to provide the technical and financial support and resources needed, as well as the establishment of clear and structured mechanisms to support countries in building capacity for their monitoring systems. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Traffic. And mindful of the time, I'm going to wrap up with one last intervention from IWMC, and then I'm closing this item. So thank you, Traffic, and I will give the floor now to IWMC.
Thank you, Chair. We simply like to say that on behalf of several organizations, the list of which we could provide at some point, that we endorse the recommendations made by the CITES Secretariat in that respect. And we also like to say that we reject outright the objections and concerns expressed by the David Shepherd Foundation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, IWMC. And thank you all for engaging in this discussion. There were differing points of view, undoubtedly, regarding the formation of a working group. But I'm going to, again, because we're not having in-sessions working groups, so I'm going to focus on what I've heard as commonalities from pretty much everyone. So first of all, I take the points raised by countries like Georgia, I believe the EU, talking about the importance of national focal points and of making sure that CITES authorities are engaging with their national focal points for the CBD to ensure that any priorities the country has with respect to wildlife trade issues is reflected. And I think that is true, the advice also that the COP gave us as parties, for those of us who are parties to both conventions. I also do take the point that the negotiations within the CBD are ongoing and they are fast moving. As Brazil pointed out, as we speak, the subsidiary bodies for the CBD are meeting and they are discussing elements of the global biodiversity framework. And there is an anticipation that there will be a meeting of the open-ended working group later and the COP in the fall, leading to the adoption of such a global biodiversity framework. And so indeed, SC74 will most likely be after this process has occurred. Maybe I note Traffic, for instance, has recognized that part of the discussion within the global biodiversity is about indicators and trying to ensure, and a discussion around minimizing reporting requirements. And so looking for areas where information exists, for example, and certainly in CITES, we have quite a bit of information regarding trade, as is the nature of our convention. I've seen support for a working group, but I've also seen concerns. And as I look at my list, it's pretty evenly matched. I think what's clear, though, even with those with concerns and with what I heard from the Secretariat, is there is a desire by the Secretariat, who I'm sure appreciates the confidence that we parties have placed in them in terms of representing the convention in those discussions. But the Secretariat has brought this to the Standing Committee, seeking some supporting advice from parties as they bring issues forward. One of the suggestions is for that advice to be provided by the chairs of the Animals and Plants Committee working with their committees. The suggestion the Secretariat had was a small working group, intersessional working group. The challenges I've heard with that intersessional working group is that on the one hand, it may be too small, and on the other hand, it may be too difficult for that working group to provide sort of uniform advice, particularly in the time frames anticipated. So my suggestion is going to be, rather than forming an intersessional working group, that we, the Standing Committee, continue to invite the Secretariat to engage in the CBD discussions, exploring various options to, I believe as the COP decision said, which I don't have in front of me, but to continue to strengthen those places where the CITES input can support the work of the Global Biodiversity Framework. In response to the Secretariat's request for support and advice, I would invite the Secretariat to liaise with the chairs of the Animals Committee, the Plants Committee, and myself as chair of the Standing Committee, And we, in turn, will work with our respective committees, or in my case, respective committees as well as interested parties, to respond to questions and comments and areas where the Secretariat is seeking our collective advice. I note I suspect this advice is more focused on the contributions of CITES as an organization rather than seeking individual country positions, because of course countries will be engaging in the negotiation directly as parties to the CBD. So again, my advice is to not form an intersessional working group, but rather to request the Secretariat to continue their good work and to seek advice from the Animals Committee, Plants Committee, Standing Committee, and parties through the chairs of the 3 committees. So I will let the committee members reflect on that. If you do not request to speak, I will assume you're agreeable to my proposed approach forward. But if you disagree with my proposed approach forward, please do let me know. In the interim, I see that Sudan has requested the floor. So thank you, Sudan. I was not sure who was requesting earlier, so I will take your request now. So please, Sudan, you have the floor. I'm sorry, Sudan, if you are speaking, I am unable to hear you. I'm not sure if your microphone is selected correctly. Sudan, I'm afraid I cannot hear your intervention. Your sound is not coming through, unless, Yvonne, unless you hear it and it's on my end. But I'm afraid that your sound is not working. So can I invite you to interact with the messaging service, the technicians through the messaging service? I trust you heard my summation about the approach forward I'm going to take. I hope that's agreeable to you. So thank you, and I apologize, Sudan. Okay, thank you. If we have an opportunity to take Sudan's comments later, we will do so. But I see no more requests for the floor, so I'm going to take it that the Standing Committee is agreeable to my suggestion of asking the Secretariat to continue their good work and seeking advice through the 3 committee chairs when necessary. Thank you very much. So with that, I will turn our attention now to the next 2 items on the agenda. So items, I'm turning now to the documents Doc 13 and Doc 14. I will open both of those items. I have just received a request from Congo. Congo, is this in relation to the previous item? Which I was hoping was closed. Okay, I will take a minute to see if Congo wishes to speak on the previous item. Congo, did you wish to take the floor?
Oui, non, c'était pour vous dire tout simplement que la position du Congo a été également envoyée.
Thank you. We simply want to say that we had given our position in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Congo. And indeed, I believe we have received that. So thank you so much. And thank you as well for delivering your position. So again, I will turn back to the next two items on the agenda. I will be opening these two items together as they both involve cooperative work with the Convention on Migratory Species. I will be inviting the Secretary General to introduce these items, and then I will then turn to the Executive Secretary of the Convention on Migratory Species before I open the floor. So, Secretary General, I will start with you. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. First of all, I'm going to refer to Standing Committee 73 Document 13, and then together take Standing Committee 73 Doc 14 in order to make one intervention and save time. First, on the cooperation with the Convention on the Conservation of Migratory Species of Wild Animals, it pleases me very much to introduce this agenda item that is what I believe the embodiment and practice of synergies between biodiversity-related conventions, and being able to showcase the very excellent relationship between the two conventions through the program, this joint program of work. In document SC 73 Doc 13, the Secretariat provides an overview of its cooperation with the Convention on the Conservation of Migratory Species of Wild Animals, or CMS, through the implementation of joint CITES CMS work programs. Annex 1 gives details on all the joint activities that CITES and CMS undertook under the work program of 2015 to 2020, which is now expired. Annex 2 presents the draft of a new CMS CITES joint work program that the Secretariats developed together for the next 5 years, from 2021 to 2025. The Standing Committee is invited to note document SC 73 Doc 13 and its Annex 1, and to endorse the draft CMS CITES Joint Work Program 2021 to 2025 in Annex 2. Then on the next document, SC 73 Doc 14, on the African Carnivores Initiative, the report of the Secretariat. In this document, the Secretariat presents the draft program of work for the joint CMS CITES African Carnivores Initiative, developed in collaboration with the CMS Secretariat and IUCN, and in consultation with the African Carnivore Range States. The ACI aims to bring coherence and efficiency in the implementation of resolutions and decisions of CITES and CMS relating to the African lion, leopard, cheetah, and wild dog, and to recommendations of the ACI that the African Carnivore Range States themselves have made. The comprehensive draft program of work was shared with the African Range States, and their inputs were incorporated. The Standing Committee is now invited to review the draft program of work for the joint CITES CMS African Carnivores Initiative and make appropriate recommendations or revisions. The program of work would be used as guidance for the CITES and CMS Secretariat's work on the ACI in the context of their joint work program 2021-2025, as I've just mentioned. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Secretary General. And I will now turn to the Executive Secretary of the Convention on Migratory Species for their introduction. Executive Secretary, you have the floor.
Madam Chair? Yes, excellent. So many thanks, Madam Chair and Madam Secretary General. It is a great pleasure to join this CITES Standing Committee meeting. On agenda item 13, cooperation between our two conventions, the CMS Secretariat greatly welcomes the renewal of its collaboration with the CITES Secretariat through the joint work program. The working relationship of our two secretariats is pragmatic, concrete, and effective. Following the consideration by the CITES Standing Committee of the new CMS-CITES Joint Work Program for the next 5 years through 2025, the CMS Standing Committee will consider this at its upcoming meeting, which will take place this September. With regards to Agenda Item 14, the African Carnivores Initiative, I greatly appreciate, Yvonne, your introduction to this agenda point, and I'd like to underscore why this program of work provides such a sound approach. The ACI brings together in a cohesive manner the most urgent and interrelated priorities. It addresses both the trade and broader conservation issues that need to be addressed to ensure the long-term existence of lion, leopard, cheetah, and African wild dog, while respecting and allocating activities to CITES and CMS entities according to their mandates. By adopting a resolution of the African Carnivores Initiative at their 13th COP last year in India, CMS parties have committed to the long-term implementation of this initiative. We welcome the advice and support of the CITES Standing Committee through its consideration of the draft program of work today. Finally, I would like to acknowledge the generous support of the government of Germany, both in past years and more recently by providing a junior professional officer to support the joint CITES-CMS African Carnivores Initiative. Many thanks, and thank you again for welcoming me to your meeting.
Thank you, Executive Secretary. So with that introduction, from the two leads, I will open the floor to members of the Standing Committee who wish to comment on document 13 or 14. I see a request from Peru. So Peru, please, you have the floor.
Buenos días, muchas
Thank you, Madam Chair. Speaking for the Central and South American and the Caribbean region, we would like to express our support for these programs, this covering the period 21 to 25. We acknowledge how important it is to keep up our work on these issues and to ensure that the appendices are up to date. We also need to ensure that there are joint efforts to ensure that we work together on issues of conservation. We welcome the cooperation between the two conventions in order to protect these species, and we welcome the work that is being done. We need to ensure that the species of concern to both organizations enjoy protection from both of us. And we think that we should ensure that the species that both organizations are concerned with enjoy our protection. Thank you.
Thank you, Peru. I see also a request from Israel. Israel, please, you have the floor.
Just briefly, in activity 6.2, it lists in the headlines lions and leopards, and for some reason cheetahs are not included. And we would recommend that in all the subpoints of 6.2, cheetahs be included also, so it'd be leopards, lions, and cheetahs. Thank you.
Thank you, Israel. And so that was in reference to the African Carnivores Initiative on page 16, I believe, if I understood correctly. I hope the Secretariat has taken note of that. So I will continue to seek insights from members of the committee, and I will also open the floor to parties who wish to comment on document 13 regarding the joint work program, or document 14, the African Carnivores Initiative. I see a request from the floor from Niger, and that will be followed by the United States and India. So Niger, please, you have the floor.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. Niger appreciate the Secretariat's engagement. Vous m'entendez? Hello?
Yes, you're coming in very clearly.
Okay. Niger appreciate the Secretariat engagement with the Senate Secretariat on the harmonizing the implementation of the John African initiative for the world. For this initiative, Niger welcomed the program of African in the Annex 2 and suggests the following addition change to be made. Starting with the objective 6 on use and management use the term of snable, but to better align with CITES objective, in suggesting using no determinant table as it will better to its implementation, the CITES implementation. Objective 6 will be, the objective 6 will further benefit from recognizing the risk from the trade in captive breeding species with regarding the snail demand, including with the wild species, giving the African big cats are captive breeding and are trades internationally. The objective 8 should also note that the risk of zoonosis disease from big cats captive breeding. Lastly, from the objective 10, I suggest that the program of the world consider resolution conf 17.4 on demand reducing strategy from combating illegal trade in species listed CITES species listed. We've developed a global awareness program from ensure the growth outside of Africa. Final, let us not forget the CITES result 6.2 and activities 2.2 should include the especially since quota are reformed in the resolution 9.21 and the NDF exchange the information on the license lamps on Chica would also benefit of the Chica range states. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Niger. And to ensure that we caught that, you provided some thoughts on amendments in terms of referring to non-detrimental action, the threats posed by captive breeding, including zoonosis in breeding. And you also agreed with Israel on the reference to cheetahs in one of the actions 6.2. So we'll continue to take interventions from parties. Once I hear from all the parties, I will turn to the Secretariat for their reactions based on the discussions that led to this document. But I will start. I have two requests from the United States. So United States was next on my list, but I'm not sure who is taking the floor. So perhaps I'll ask both to be given the floor, and then the appropriate speaker can take the mic. So the United States, please, and then you'll be followed by India. Can I ask the United States please be given the floor?
Great. Okay, so you've got both on.
So I'm not sure, but I would ask one person, please, to make the intervention for the United States.
Carolina, could I interject and ask, please, that we were preparing to one intervene on Doc 13 and one on 14. So if my colleague would please speak first on 13, and then I'll follow with Doc 14 intervention. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that clarification. So the United States, Rowena, I believe you will get us started.
Thank you. The United States takes note of document 13 and appreciates the summary of progress on the CMS CITES Joint Work Program from 2015 to 2020 presented in Annex 1. We are taking the floor to draw an important distinction for us between noting the program, which we believe is appropriate, versus endorsing as currently written. Thank you. I'll turn it over to my colleague from the Flowers Service.
Thank you. Continue. So with regard to document 14, the United States appreciates the opportunity to review the draft program of work for the joint CITES CMS African Carnivores Initiative. We note that decision 18.56 directs the Animals Committee to consider the Secretariat's report related to this work, including in the development of the dedicated program of work. Unfortunately, as a result of its scheduled 2020 meeting being canceled, the Animals Committee has yet to have an opportunity to review the draft. Therefore, we recommend that the Standing Committee establish an intersessional working group to review the draft program of work and provide its recommendations to the revision of SC 74. And if formed, we believe that the intersessional working group should begin its work after the 31st meeting of the Animals Committee and take into consideration the outcomes of AC 31 and input from technical experts identified by the Animals Committee and African carnivore range states. Lastly, we want to align ourselves with the views expressed by Israel and Niger with regard to inclusion of cheetah. Thank you.
Thank you, United States. So I will turn now to India. India will be followed by Gabon and then Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My intervention is with regard to document 13. As chair of the Standing Committee of CMS, India would like to thank the CITES and the CMS secretariats for the activities they have conducted over the last working program period and for the proposed joint working program for the 2021 to 2025 period. India would also like to emphasize the importance of cooperation and synergies between the two conventions. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, India, and thank you very much for that intervention. I see Gabon, followed by Zimbabwe, and then Burkina Faso.
The speaker asks if she can be heard. Could you just reassure me? Am I audible? Asks the speaker. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the floor. Now, with respect to SC 7313 and 14, Gabon would like to thank the Secretariat for having prepared these documents. 13, first of all, we would like to thank both the CITES Secretariat and the CMS Secretariat. We would also like to take this opportunity to congratulate both secretariats for the excellent work that they have done on their joint program for 2015 to 20. We would also like to say that we support the recommended joint program for 2021-25, particularly with respect to everything to do with updating information with respect to those species in the appendices of both organizations and species covered by both conventions. We would also support efforts made to harmonize nomenclature and taxonomy in order to ensure compatibility. To turn now to document 14, we would like to say how much we appreciate CITES and CMS's joint work in order to develop the African Carnivores Initiative. We support that program. We do have a proposal, however, some proposals, however. This with respect to the working program in Annex 2. Starting with objectives, on objective 6, for instance, we have the term sustainable. We want to ensure that the term sustainable be changed to say non-prejudicial. We could also improve 6 with a reference to the trade in these species, and work on species trade can be done to protect them, as we are dealing with species that are traded internationally, so that should be covered. There was an interruption, but the speaker has resumed now. We think that all of these proposals, all proposals made, should be taken on board. We're going to leave it at that in expressing our support for the statement made by our colleague from Niger earlier. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Gabon. I have 3 more parties, and I think I will close from parties at that point and see if there's interventions from observers. I'm hearing some desire to make some amendments, and of course that's difficult to do on the floor, and some of these amendments are more involved than others, so it's not a simple correction. So because of that, we may need to have a working group working intercessionally with the Secretariat to address some of these points. So just to let you know, that's where I'm seeing. I will take the 3 interventions from Zimbabwe, Burkina Faso, and Sudan, and then I will take conservation force, and I will probably try to sum up at that point. So Zimbabwe, please, you have the floor, followed by Burkina Faso.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. J'espère que vous m'entendez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hope you can hear me, says the speaker. I would like to make a statement on document 14. Burkina Faso very much appreciates the CITES Secretariat work with the CMS Secretariat. We welcome their efforts to harmonize joint efforts to protect African carnivores. We would also like to express our support for the program of work that is outlined in the document. We would like to express our support for the statements made by Niger and Gabon. Those delegations suggested some amendments to the document. We would also like to express support for the Sahel sub-region's proposal with respect to the work on cheetahs, the addition of cheetahs. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Burkina Faso. So the last intervention I will take from a party is from Sudan. And in the interests of time, I'm afraid I will only be able to take 2 interventions from observers, so I apologize in advance. So first, Sudan. Oh, and of course, Zimbabwe, if we can return to Zimbabwe. But first, Sudan, please. Hello, Sudan. I'm afraid we continue to have the same challenge where we are not unable to hear your intervention. Yes, I'm sorry. We still cannot hear you.
It's not that they're not muted, Madam Chair. They're on, but it's the microphone. Sudan, if you could unplug your headset and just speak using the computer's audio, and unplug your headset, please. Try to speak now. No. It's a problem with the settings, probably. Sorry.
Sudan, yeah, I'll invite you to again try to check your settings with the help of the technicians. If you continue to have this issue, I will invite you to provide your intervention in French, English, or Spanish in the messaging, and I will ask the Secretariat to alert me to that, and I can read your intervention into the record. In the interim, I will see now if Zimbabwe is able to take the floor.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Zimbabwe wishes to thank the Secretariat for preparing this document and the opportunities that are ahead of us to work together between CITES and CMS are really wonderful. And we know that it's made possible when resources are made available to implement the work program. So I was of the opinion that perhaps considering maybe crafting a financing strategy or some sustainable financing mechanism beyond just having a statement that we will do fundraising, we might need something a bit more robust so that we can consider further synergies beyond CITES and CMS and explore more joint programs with other biodiversity conventions such as CBD, so that we can be able to effectively achieve the targets and activities that we look forward to implement during the 2021-2025 period. We also wish to appreciate the support given by the government of Germany and various other international cooperating partners in the previous period, and would really wish that they can continue to offer such kind of support so that we do not have an excellent joint work program that may not necessarily be implemented effectively due to lack of resources, being mindful of the COVID-19 impact on our finances globally. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zimbabwe. And that is the last intervention from a party. So as I mentioned, I will take 2 interventions from observers. I will start with Conservation Force, followed by Born Free Foundation. Conservation Force, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thanks to the Secretariat for organizing this meeting in these challenging times. Madam Chair, our intervention is on document 14. And first of all, we concur with the United States on the intersectional course of actions. And Madam Chair, although the African Carnivores Initiative could be perceived as laudable, we would like to highlight some concerns about the program of work. It seems to us that the program of work, and especially some of its underlying objectives, fall beyond the mandate of CITES, and perhaps even CMS. In particular, Objective 2, Land Use Planning and Habitat Conservation Restoration, is beyond the mandate of CITES, and we still have to see proofs in the past work of CMS where and how that convention has significantly and successfully contributed to the halting of habitat loss, which, as we are all aware, is the single most important cause of decreasing wildlife worldwide. Loss of habitat is the focus of IEC Biodiversity Target 5, Habitat Loss Halved or Reduced, and is central to the post-2020 global biodiversity framework. In any serious environmental action, conservation of ecosystems shall have a higher priority than stabilizing individual species populations. There is a need to shift attention away from individual animals and species to the ecosystem. This will require focusing on environmental impacts, which include social and cultural impacts, rather than on consumption versus non-consumption issues. It is about time to start concentrating our conservation efforts on endangered spaces rather than on endangered species, and on the tools available to maintain functional ecosystems and wildlife outside protected areas in Africa. With the continuing explosion on African human population continuing into the 21st century, we can therefore expect habitat and wildlife population to continue to decline in the years ahead. Tourist safari hunting, Madam Chair, is the primary tool preventing habitat loss in Africa. It secures the most habitat, more than 1,200,000 square kilometers, versus the 600,000 square kilometers of protected areas, and provide the most poaching control and management on that habitat. Habitat loss is being worsened by restriction on import of hunting trophies and misleading and flow campaigns against hunting. Protected areas have been abandoned and converted to agriculture, including livestock, thanks to trophy import restrictions and uninformed anti-hunting campaigns, mainly concentrated on single species and sometimes single individuals.
Conservation Force, apologies for interrupting you, but I'd ask you to wrap up and focus your comments on the documents at hand, please. Thank you.
On Objective 3, this was on Objective 2, Madam Chair, of the Program on Work. On Objective 3, prey-based conservation and restorations, which seems to have that falls outside the scope of the Convention, as the majority of prey species are not listed in both conventions. On Objective 5, conflict and coexistence, it is peculiar to see this objective when CITES has negated twice in the last two COPs rural communities and indigenous people to have a voice in the deliberations of the conventions. On Objective 7, Madam Chair, illegal trade in illegal and incidental killing, we are convincing that improving legal trade opportunities is missing from the Program of Work and is equally important objective as recognized by Resolution 8.3. In conclusion, all these objectives, Madam Chair, are clearly conducted on a daily basis by many range states, especially in Southern Africa, and the range states are more in need of practical financial support than on a new and somehow burdensome initiative. For example, we are concerned that CMS alone cannot help in removing the underlying causes of habitat loss. A comprehensive approach is needed involving other MIAs, such as CBD, in this ambitious program of work. The future of large carnivores in Africa needs an inclusive and supporting approach to the work that many range states, especially in Southern Africa, have already implemented since many years. We stand ready to continue our support to the Convention Secretariat and range states for the benefits of their people and the maintenance of biodiversity and wildlife wilderness area. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Conservation Force. And again, in the interest of time, I will only be taking one other intervention from Born Free Foundation. I do note other observers wish to speak. I'll invite you to include your comments in the messaging service so that other parties can be aware of your points. I will also note that I do not think we can come to conclusion on the second document and anticipate there will be some further work done intersessionally. So Born Free Foundation, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, it's a little faint, but we can hear you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm making this intervention on behalf of the following organisations with respect to agenda item 14. Animal Welfare Institute, Born Free Foundation, Centre for Biological Diversity, David Shepherd Wildlife Foundation, Environmental Investigation Agency, Eurogroup for Animals, Fondation France Weber, Humane Society International, Pan-African Sanctuary Alliance, Pro-Wildlife, and Species Survival Network. We recommend that Standing Committee supports the proposed programme of work for the joint CITES CMS African Carnivores Initiative with the following suggested amendments. In Objective 6, we suggest replacing the term sustainable with non-detrimental in accordance with CITES terminology and requirements and as suggested by Gabon and Burkina Faso. We recommend Objectives 6 and 8 include reference to risks of trade in captive bred specimens of African carnivores, as highlighted by Niger and supported by Burkina Faso, specifically through stimulation of demand and the potential spread of zoonotic diseases. It would be useful to recommend the implementation of One Health principles in Objective 8 and to ensure these principles are pervasive throughout the implementation of the African Carnivores Initiative. We support Israel, Niger, Burkina Faso and the United States recommendation to include cheetah in Result 6.2 and the associated activities. And we recommend that Activity 10.2.2 should include specific reference to the need for demand reduction strategies to combat illegal trade in African Carnivores Initiative species. We've provided these comments in writing to the Secretariat and stand ready to provide further clarification and to participate in any ongoing discussions on this issue. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Born Free Foundation. So noting our time, I think I'm going to wrap up with these two documents. So first, I will turn to SC 73 Doc 13. This is the cooperation with CMS, where we are invited to note the document and endorse the joint work program. And I note we endorsed the past joint work program, and so this does seem to be the approach that the Standing Committee takes. Based on the interventions I've heard, I think the Standing Committee is agreeable to noting the present document and endorsing the joint work program for 2021 to 2025. So that's our approach to document 13. With respect to document 14, so in here, the Standing Committee was invited to review the program of work and make appropriate recommendations or revisions. We've heard from a number of countries, as well as some organizations, suggesting revisions to the document. Some were short, but others were some specific language that's a bit difficult for us to take on in this forum, in particular online. I also note the comments from the United States about the benefit of having an animals committee review. So my proposed path here would be to form what I hope is a relatively small working group, particularly including those countries who have indicated an interest in providing some revisions, to bring together the proposed revisions, to have a brief discussion on those revisions, and then provide them for the Standing Committee. So I will first see if there's any, I'm going to take a minute to think about the exact mandate of that working group so it is not misunderstood. So in the meantime, if there's any Standing Committee members who object to the proposed way forward on either of the documents, to please take the floor. And if not, I will then turn to forming the second working group on the African Carnivores Initiative. So, Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Canada does not disagree with your proposed way forward, but we would like to make sure that the mandate for this working group, and mindful that there are a lot of intersessional working groups that have put a significant pressure on the parties and the Secretariat. We'd like to make sure that the mandate for this working group is very clear and specific to the task at hand based on the recommendations that have been made at this meeting. We are concerned that it is a subject that could just go in a variety of directions, so we would appreciate a specific focus. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Canada. And certainly that will be my intent, which is why I was trying to take a few minutes to think carefully about what's at hand. And in particular, the Standing Committee is being invited to review the program of work and make appropriate recommendations or revisions. So, and again, I'm referring to document 14 on the African Carnivores Initiative. So a program of work has been developed, and I understand that it was extensively consulted, in particular with range states, and that therefore there is a lot of work that has gone into the existing program of work. I note that there are some recommendations. There were very discrete recommendations in terms of revisions to the document. So I would ask the working group to be established to focus in particular on the revisions made here during this meeting. So taking into account the comments made by the participants at the meeting, and to try to focus their attention on those key objectives that were identified in the discussion. And I also note the comment from the United States, and I'm trying to find the plan, but I understood from the United States that there was an anticipation that the Animals Committee would also have a chance to review, and so such that the working group might begin its work after the Animals Committee session has concluded. So I hope that's clear, and I hope that's focused enough. I see Poland, so Poland, please.
Intended working group is to be in session 1 or intersessional, because we wouldn't like to delay the process to form intersessional working group, whereas we can agree to discuss it in sessionally. And also we don't agree with the US proposal on the Animals Committee involvement, because reading the decisions at stake, we think that the program of work itself shouldn't be analyzed by the Animals Committee. The Secretariat reports should be under scrutiny of Animals Committee only. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Poland. So in response to your first question, I cannot form an in-session working group. We do not have the time. So my thought here was to form a working group that will operate intersessionally and provide that advice. If in terms of your comment regarding not losing time, it would be useful to have the Standing Committee may want to rely on a postal process once that working group has done the review and revisions for agreeing the carnivores initiative. That's a point I will raise with the Standing Committee after. So now I'm taking a look again at the decision to ensure that I understand the direction we were given. So the Secretariat was tasked with developing a dedicated program of work and submitting it to the Standing Committee for review and appropriate revision. So it is this element of the suite of decisions that we are addressing right now. Yeah, it's a bit ambiguous as to who is doing what, because it's asking the Animals Committee to review the report of the Secretariat. Secretariat, perhaps you have some advice on how to address this. I do recognize that there are comments, so I do think that there is a need for a bit of work to address those comments that we cannot do right here at this meeting with the time we have. So perhaps, Secretariat, you could provide me with some insights on your understanding of the path anticipated in this decision, so I can advise on the best time for that working group to provide their advice to you. So Secretariat, I'd look to your advice, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Indeed, we can provide some advice. I ask Tom de Villeneuve to take the floor, please.
Tom, over to you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Can you hear me? Yes, it is correct, actually. The program of work is to be developed by the CITES Secretariat in consultation with the CMS Secretariat and ICN, and then to be submitted to the Standing Committee for their revision and eventually recommendations. This is what we have done over the last 6 months, year or so, and we have taken on board many consultations, many comments that we received from African carnivore range states themselves. The source of the program of work is threefold: CMS decisions, CITES decisions, and African carnivore range states recommendations themselves. They have been amalgamated on the 10 objectives in the program of work, and it has become very complex and a large framework as a consequence. The Animals Committee is not specifically requested in the decisions, as you just pointed out, decision 1858, to review the program of work in the same manner as a standing committee is instructed to do it. We wanted to bring the results of the discussion here at the standing committee to the attention of the Animals Committee at its 38th meeting in a month's time, and that would be the report of the Secretariat to the Animals Committee. We had not anticipated that the Animals Committee would also review the entire program of work, because we didn't read that in the decision as worded. With regard to the way forward, I believe that you have already indicated interest in establishing an intersessional working group. That seems an agreeable way forward, I believe, particularly when the working group would be able to focus on those items that were brought up in the discussion here at SE 73, and try to fix, or at least address some of the concerns or the issues that parties have brought up in that regard. We would encourage actually a pretty narrow focus for this working group to operate on, so that the entire program of work does not become unraveled, because it has been it is actually based on existing recommendations, decisions, and that actually both conventions and African range states themselves have already agreed to. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Secretariat, and I appreciate those clarifications as I tried to catch up with the decisions. So based on what I've heard, I am going to form an intersessional working group. The intersessional working group will focus on providing, on addressing the revisions, the proposed revisions that were raised during the discussion, and providing that advice towards revisions of the joint program of work on the African Carnivores Initiative. So the focus is very much on those key revisions rather than reopening discussions on the whole of the program of work, which I understand have been very well consulted amongst range parties and the two secretariats, the two conventions. So with that, I will those will be my conclusions for these two meetings, and I will look then to seek interest in this second document in this revisions intersessional working group. Yvonne, I forget the best way, perhaps the best way to seek interest in the intersessional working group is to ask those who wish to participate to simply hit the request to speak so that you will show up in my request list. I will presume that you're seeking interest in the working group and not in actually requesting to speak. And I will also go.
We already have, sorry, we have some requests in the chat, so we will take note of those. And then, as you say, if there's a request to speak, you wish to, we can note those as well.
So I'm going to start with the countries in the request list, as of course we are going to manage with the rules of procedure. So I see Yemen, Israel, and once I've called your country, please remove yourself from the list so I can see the others. United States, Niger, Germany, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Namibia, China, Gabon, I believe it's Ethiopia. I'm not 100% sure because the country name isn't provided there, but I believe our colleague Kumara is representing Ethiopia. In which case, if that is the case, please remove yourself from the list and I will add Ethiopia to the list. Okay, that was the case. Argentina. Okay, and now I'm going to start with organizations. I'm going to read them all, and then I'll do my count and see if my my rules are being met. So organizations, when I call your name, do not remove yourself from the list. Just stay on the list so that I can make sure I can see how this goes. Okay, so I have WWF, Born Free Foundation, Traffic, IWMC, Humane Society International, IUCN, Panthera, Safari Club International. I have a second person from WWF, so I'm going to take that as the same organization. Conservation Force. I also have a second person from Safari Club, but that's the same organization. I'll leave you to determine who's attending. Wildlife Conservation Society, San Diego Zoo, Conservation Analytics, EAZA, ZSL, and I notice Spain, so I'm adding Spain to my country list. So I have 13 with what I just read, and I haven't checked the messaging. So if there's additional ones there, I am not aware of that. But I have 13 parties and 14 organizations. And so I wonder if there are some synergies amongst the organizations that you might consider.
USA has just added their name.
Yeah, I have the USA as a party, so I'm wondering if the USA wishes to take the floor. If that's the case, I will give you the floor in a minute. I'm still trying to sort out our attendance. Oh, and I actually note I actually have 15 because I note that I have Safari Club International Foundation and Safari Club International. And so again, that means I am, in terms of the rules of procedure, I'm 2 over. So I am going to give a moment for perhaps some communication amongst those parties those organizations I've indicated, to see if you have the opportunity to consult amongst yourselves to see if you can create some synergies. Yes. Oh, and yeah, I do note that in addition, we will want to have the CMS represented on this, given it is a joint work program. And so the executive secretary of the CMS will be on here. So I will ask those parties that I've read out if you could message amongst yourselves to see if you have some synergies. And if not, I will make a decision in order to be aligned with our rules of procedure. So at this moment in time, I will close the discussion on this item, but I will come back to everyone with the final makeup of this working group, and in particular on the organizations, the observer organizations. I see Poland has taken the floor, so I believe I have another country joining our list, so I will add Poland. Okay, so I would ask all the organizations and those who who I've called out to please now release your request for the floor. I've called your names. I think I have you all. And I will So I still have some requests to speak. So I'm wondering if this is on this issue. And I see now Benin has added themselves. So first of all, I will see if Benin, Benin, I believe then you were just adding yourself to the working group, and Costa Rica as well. So Benin and Costa Rica, Gabon, I have already included you on this list. Costa Rica, if you are asking to join the working group, then I've taken note of that and you can release your request for the floor. And with that, we have even numbers, and so I think we are set with this working group. I see a remaining request for the floor from the United States, so I will turn to the United States to see if you have a comment on this working group.
With some clarification about how we'll handle the decision 18.58, and perhaps owning to the lack of clarity in the decision itself and the COVID delay. Our understanding was that what was anticipated is that the Secretariat and the Animals Committee would work together, and that would be feeding in and providing guidance and recommendations. It just seems at this point in time that the AC technical input and feedback will be lost or missed, and so that's a concern, of course, for us. But I also am not sure I understood that correctly, and we'd at least like to be clear on what is happening with that particular decision and how it will be dealt with, as I think we were anticipating some real discussion of it at the Animals Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, United States. I will see if the Secretariat or the Chair of the Animals Committee wants to react to that. However, and I do note that one of the key points here is to ensure we have finalized the African Carnivores Initiative. And so I would also hope that the intersessional working group we've just established will be able to undertake its work promptly and have some early direction to share with the Animals and Plants Committee, as I believe that's the stage. We want to have the final document, and then there's reports and insights from the committees. But I will see if the Secretariat or the Animals Committee Chair wants to react to that, and if not, perhaps I will ask that they follow up offline. So I'll see if there's any requests either from the Chair or the Secretariat.
I think, Madam.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that we can leave it for offline, if you don't mind. I just wanted to note also that Poland has sent a message that they were not joining the working group, but wanted to make an intervention. But
okay, so does Poland still wish to make an intervention? In which case, I will be happy to give them the floor. Poland, please, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and sorry for intervening again. Our intervention was about a suggestion that we should set a deadline for the working group in the spirit of our previous comment, not to prolong already advanced work. We think that such a deadline would allow us to work more efficiently and not prolong the whole process. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Poland. I appreciate that. It's difficult for me to set a deadline because there's a number of factors in place. So I think as part of the formation of this working group, I will strongly encourage the working group to undertake its activities in a timely fashion, noting that its mandate is limited to just focusing on those few revisions that were provided. And it is my hope that the working group's conclusions might be ready in advance of the Animals Committee meeting, which I believe starts in June. So that will be the strong urging I will give on this particular item so that, as you know, Poland, we can continue to progress these activities. I would like then to just close this item. I see that the Animals Committee Chair did request the floor, but I think we have a path forward, and I do invite you to clarify with parties about the plan for the Animals Committee meeting. With my apologies, United States, but I am really mindful that we are way behind here. So with that, I'm going to close the floor on this, and we will turn to the next item on our agenda, which now brings us to today's agenda, item 16. So okay, item 16 is on review of resolutions and decisions. So this is a report from the Secretariat. In the interest of time, I will just ask us to dive right into the discussion. To refresh everyone's memory, the Secretariat has prepared, in the document, the Secretariat proposes some corrections of non-substantive errors in the interpretation section of the appendices, such as cross-references, etc. And it also informs the Standing Committee of its intention to propose to the Conference of the Parties amendments to relevant resolutions and decisions. And so we are invited to agree to the proposed corrections of non-substantive errors, and these are found in paragraph 4 of Doc 16. And we are asked to take note of the proposed revisions found in paragraph 5 and also in paragraph 7. So with that, I will turn and I will open the floor to members of the Standing Committee for any comments on Doc 16. And I will also, I see Poland and Indonesia, and after which I will also open the floor to parties. So Poland, please, you have the floor, followed by Indonesia and then Peru.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Regarding this agenda item, Poland wishes to thank the Secretariat for this very important document, and we would like to express our support to the suggested corrections and revisions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Poland. Appreciate your succinct intervention. I believe I was turning to Indonesia, and that's followed by Peru. Indonesia, please.
Thank you very much for the Secretariat for preparing the document. Indonesia would like to draw members' attention to the Secretariat intention to prepare a proposal for revision of
I'm sorry, Indonesia, we seem to have lost your sound. I heard you were drawing our attention, and then I've lost your sound, and you do not seem to be on the floor anymore. So I would ask the technicians to please engage with Indonesia to try to resolve, as they have a point to make on this. And in the interim, I will ask Peru, please, to take the floor.
Presidenta, señora Secretaria General, a nombre de América Central.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On behalf of our region, we would like to say that we are happy to accept the non-substantive errors in paragraph 4. And with respect to paragraph 7, countries of the region think that the date should be October before any COP. That would mean that we will be in keeping with our annual reports. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Peru, for that comment, and I'm sure the Secretariat has taken note. I see that we have Indonesia returned, so let's try again. Indonesia, please, you have the floor. Unfortunately, we still continue to seem to have challenge with Indonesia. I apologize, Indonesia. I'll invite you to continue to try to address it with your system. I see another speaker from Indonesia. Perhaps you are able to take the floor. So can I hear from Indonesia from Amir, please?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I sure can.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for the Secretariat for preparing this document. Indonesia would like to draw members' attention to the Secretariat intention to prepare a proposal for revision of Resolution Con 1117, Ref COP 18 on the national report. The Secretariat of the is considering changing of the deadline for submitting implementation report and annual illegal trade report from 31st October to 31st May. The Secretariat argues that the moving of the deadline for submissions to the 31st May will allow enough time for analysis of the reports, especially if a meeting of the conference of the parties is held in the first quarter of the year. While these arguments make sense by the Secretariat of point of view, to the Indonesia, and I believe many parties, submission of the report by 31st May would present a daunting challenge. Parties will not have sufficient time to obtain, compile, and consolidate comprehensive data on the trade and other activities undertaken by CITES authorities. In Indonesia, recapitulation of the export quota is only available after June or July. Furthermore, given the fact that implementation of the CITES in Indonesia involves several government agencies across the large archipelagic area, Indonesia's management authority needs some time to gather data and information from the various sources. In that regard, moving the submission date to the 31st May will add further burden to the parties. If we should change the submission date in order to cope with the possible COP meeting in the first quarter of the year, Indonesia prefer to have a more moderate change of the submission date. For example, by September 30 or August 31st of the year. In addition, the change of the submission date should be accompanied by the modification of the report format, so that parties could have more ample time to complete reports in shorter period of the time before. The national report should be more simple and interlinked with the implementation report and annual illegal reports. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Indonesia. And again, I think the Secretariat will take note of that, as these are their proposals. And so you should consider, the Secretariat will consider these comments when they consider what proposals indeed they will advance to the COP. So with that, I have two more interventions from parties. And I will open the floor to all who are present in the hopes that we can expeditiously address these items. So I will start with Australia, and I'd like to be followed by Gabon, please. Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Australia thanks the Secretariat for their work on this item. With reference to the Secretariat's proposal to incorporate Decision 14.81 on Great Whales into Resolution Comp 14.8, Rev Cop 17, on periodic review of species included in Appendices 1 and 2, Australia's priority is to ensure the International Whaling Commission is the global authority for decisions regarding commercial whaling. Australia proposed Decision 14.81 at COP14 in 2007 and has supported the ongoing maintenance of this decision since that time. Australia can provisionally support the incorporation of the effect of Decision 14.81 into Resolution 14.8, Rev Cop 17. We offer this provisional support on the basis that an appropriate amendment to Resolution Comp 14.18 that has the equivalent effect of Decision 14.81 is adopted. That is, that the revised resolution directs the Animals Committee not conduct a periodic review of any great whale, including the fin whale, while the moratorium by the International Whaling Commission is in place. We would also seek the consideration of the Secretariat when preparing the working program for COP19 to ensure that the discussion on the proposed revisions to Resolution Conf 14.8 RevCop 17 can be concluded before decision 14.81 is considered for deletion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Australia. Taking note of that as well. I will take the final intervention then from Gabon, please. Gabon, you have the mic.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would like to congratulate the Secretariat for the report we are now considering. We support the changes proposed other than 1010 Rev Cop 18. We feel that it would be more judicious to replace e-commerce by wildlife crime linked to the internet. We think that the proposed change would actually reduce the scope of our activities against all illegal activities. This to do with elephant specimens. We think that the broader term e-commerce is justified when it comes to elephants. Ivory trade is regularly used to hide illegal ivory trade. So 1010 itself does ask that those engaged in legal ivory trade who are involved in poaching be closed down. Now on 14.8 Rev Cop 17, we support that proposal. This is a decision that asked the Animals Committee not to proceed to periodic reviews of whales as long as the International Whaling Commission moratorium is in place. Since this mandate is still in force, we should maintain 1481 in 14.8 in order to maintain reciprocity and harmonization of the terminology used by CITES and the IWC. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Gabon. And so just to confirm, I've opened the floor to all interested observer and parties who wish to speak. I'd ask if you wish to speak, you would request the floor now, as after I will close the list. So I will take two final interventions. I will hear from Argentina, followed by Pro Wildlife, and then the list is closed. So Argentina, please.
Greetings to everyone. This is the first time Argentina has taken the floor. We would like to take the opportunity to thank the Secretariat for having organized this event so successfully. And we would also like to congratulate you, Madam Chair, on your excellent chairing of these meetings. Now, on this matter, we would like to say the following. We agree with Peru's statement, first of all, and secondly, we agree with what Australia had to say with respect to the IWC. This is a matter of great importance to us, and we wish to make that point. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Argentina. And so I will take the final intervention from Pro Wildlife, and then I have closed the floor. Thank you. I appear to have lost pro-wildlife. I would very much like to close this item as I see that in terms of the item, okay, pro-wildlife has returned. So pro-wildlife, please.
I'm sorry for the technical problems. Thank you, Madam Chair. This intervention is on behalf of Pro-Wildlife, Animal Welfare Institute, Born Free, David Shepherd Wildlife Foundation, Eurogroup for Animals, Fondation Franz Weber, Four Paws International, HSI, Japan Wildlife Conservation Society, and the Species Survival Network. We would just very briefly like to align ourselves with the comments made by Gabon and by Australia and Argentina on the IWC issue. In summary, we support all proposed changes except for the change to Resolution 10.10. We urge the Standing Committee to oppose the replacement of the word e-commerce with wildlife crime linked to the Internet in Resolution 1010. We do explicitly support the recommended change to Resolution 14.8 on periodic review of species included in Appendices 1 and 2 to incorporate Decision 14.81 because we believe it is important to maintain the reciprocity between the IWC and CITES on management issues as long as that continues. Thank you.
Thank you, Pro-Wildlife. And so I will conclude this item. So first point, the Standing Committee was invited to agree to the proposed non-substantive corrections. So I did not see any concerns with those. So the Standing Committee agrees with the proposed corrections of non-substantive errors as outlined in paragraph 4. With regards to the proposals that the Secretariat is considering advancing to the COP, paragraph 5 and paragraph 7 of the report, we have heard some comments from various parties as well as pro-wildlife. And so the Standing Committee invites the Secretariat to take note of these comments when considering their proposals to the Conference of the Parties. And in turn, the committee takes note of your proposals. So with that conclusion, I would like to try to make up some of the time we've lost by turning our attention to document 17. So again, in the interest of time, I'm just going to dive right into this one. In particular, this document, the Secretariat introduces proposed revisions to the guidelines for the preparation and submission of CITES annual reports and to the guidelines for the preparation and submission of the CITES annual illegal trade reports. I understand that a first draft of these guidelines were posted and the Secretariat invited comments from parties and stakeholders. And so the Secretariat outlines in the document how these comments were incorporated. At this time, the Standing Committee is invited, therefore, to approve the revised guidelines for the preparation and submission of CITES annual reports in Annex 1, including the revisions to the Spanish version proposed in paragraph 7 of the document, as well as approve the guidelines for the preparation and submission of annual illegal trade reports found in Annex 2. And the committee is also invited to comment on suggested revisions to Resolution Comp 4.6 and 11.17, which is found in paragraph 10 and 11 of the document. So I will open the floor, starting with members of the committee. Oh, and my apologies, I do recall that the Secretariat needed to make a clarification on this one. So with my apologies, Secretary General, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I understand we are running out of time. We need to go fast. So I will only add that since the document was published, the Secretariat has received a further suggested edit that it would like to propose to the Standing Committee as follows. It is proposed that the word elephant should be removed from the NB or note below in the explanation of tusk, in parentheses, raw ivory, in Annex 1 and Annex 2, so that it is also applicable to whole carved tusks from hippo, walrus, and narwhal. The note below would now read, MB, whole carved tusks should be reported as carving-ivory, parentheses, CIVC above. The Secretariat supports this edit as it ensures that any whole carved tusk from hippo, walrus, narwhal, or elephant should be reported as, in quotations, carving-ivory. Last week, the Secretariat also received a letter from the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland wishing to put on record their objection to a deletion in the table in both sets of guidelines containing the ISO codes for the names of countries, territories, and special areas of geographical interest. Thank you, Madam
Secretary
Chair.
General. And so we take note of your second point. And on your first point, can you just please remind me of the page in the document where this additional edit regarding tusks is being made?
It's in Annex 1 and Annex 2.
On what page?
Oh, okay, sorry, just a second.
And this is in relation to the English version. I think we understood the intent, however, so that the information around tusks applies to more than elephant species, but also to other species where relevant.
Yes, I'm getting the page for you now. Page 15.
Thank you, Secretariat. So thank you for those clarifications. I will now again open the floor to starting with members of the Standing Committee and then turn to other parties. So Israel, followed by Peru, please.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, sorry, was having technical difficulties. Thank you, Chair. Mindful of time, we'll keep this intervention short. With recognition of the importance of the legal trade reports and the need to optimize reporting requirements from countries, Israel calls for CITES and other partners of the International Consortium on Combating Wildlife Crime to examine potential overlaps between reporting requirements or needs. An option of a joint reporting mechanism and database for CITES, Interpol, and the World Customs Organization will allow better information exchange and decrease reporting burdens on countries. We also recognize the issue of low capacity for AITRs, or illegal trade reports, within countries, stemming, at least in some cases, from lack of infrastructure to collect data on illegal activities as they pertain to wildlife. We therefore urge CITES to explore options of assisting countries in building this capacity. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Israel. I've taken note of your comments. I turn now to Peru, please.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. On Annex 1 and 2 of this document, we would like to say on behalf of the Central American Caribbean region that the trade codes for the species and the presentation of the reports have some ambiguities. We'd like to refer to them to establish a generic definition for Dendrophila, which includes vegetable and animal fiber, natural fiber, animal fiber, vicuna fiber, technical terms for various materials of natural origin that can be woven or knitted. This would allow for flexibility. So we propose that we remove vicuna and guanaco, which appear in the list, but which can cover all types of animals. For the definition of handicraft products, we could use the following definition. A handicraft product produced by artisans purely by hand or with manual or mechanical tools when there is a manual input, which is the major input into the finished product. When we look at leathers, we should talk about leather, feathers, and scales. So skins, mainly full or whole skins, crocodile, vests, and outerwear with and without scales. In terms of a whale, it has been listed as bone, so we need to talk about Berlin, where we talk about the use of them for food purposes as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Peru. I open the floor again to standing committee members as well as parties, and I'll also invite observers who may wish to make a comment. And while I see if there are any requests for the floor, I'll also see if the Secretariat had any comments or reactions to the proposed clarifications or areas of clarification raised by Peru.
No, Madam Secretary, we don't have, Madam Chair, we don't have any additional comments on that. Thank you. We have taken note, just to say that we have taken note. Thank you.
So I see a request from Belgium. So Belgium, please.
Off, micro on. Yes, sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, I put our intervention in the chat, but I don't think you have seen it, but just it was for sake of time. We just want to thank you, the Secretary, sorry, for the good work achieved in order to facilitate parties reporting, and Belgium approves the revised guidelines and supports the suggested revision to both resolutions, allowing the Secretariat to include automatically any new terms adopted by the COP into the guidelines, and we also approve the last addition made by corrections made by the Secretariat. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Belgium. And indeed, you're right. I did not see your intervention in the messaging. Lots of buttons on my end. Overall, I'm hearing support for the guidelines from the Standing Committee. I take note that Peru offered some areas where some clarifications might be useful, and so I would invite the Secretariat to take note of those. If you have any questions on the comments from Peru, you can follow up with Peru, and then consider if any further tweaks are needed. But I think the Standing Committee is confident that we can approve these two revised documents as presented in Annex 1 and Annex 2. And I also see, well, you've seen some agreement from Belgium on the proposals regarding the resolutions. And certainly, so you can take note of the comments you've heard regarding those as well. So again, the Secretariat's invited to interact with Peru to ensure that we have a good understanding of some of those tweaks that they're suggesting. But the Standing Committee is happy to approve the revised guidelines found in Annex 1 and Annex 2. Excellent. Thank you all again. I am appreciating everyone's patience as we continue to manage our way through these novel forms of communication. So I will now turn us to the next item on our agenda, electronic systems and information technologies. So this is a report of the working group So I am really pleased to offer the floor to someone other than me and offer the floor to the chair of the working group Switzerland, please, to introduce your report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be brief. First, I would like to thank the members of the working group for their constructive discussions and input, and also to the Secretariat for their continuous support in moving this issue forward, which has been on the table for many years now. I will just highlight the activities since COP18. There has been the establishment of a task force on CITES Electronic Permit Information Exchange EPICS by UNEC and UNESCAP, and we have been participating in this task force. The aim is to bring together parties that are interested in exchanging permits on an electronic basis and to exchange views and experiences on that topic, which is a very helpful body. Then the CITES and WCO, the World Customs Organization, co-organized an international workshop on modern customs procedures for improved control of trade in CITES listed species in December 2020. The aim was to show how current custom practices fit with CITES processes and CITES resolutions. The working group on electronic systems met twice to review these issues from the WCO and CITES workshop, and we prepared to propose revisions to Resolution Conf 12.3 in Annex 2. Mainly, we propose the insertion of references to new technical guidance documents that would be used along with the CITES toolkit to make them more formal to help parties when they implement e-permitting systems. And the second proposal is to remove the application signature in box 4 from the permit template. The working group plans to meet again and may propose further amendments to Resolution Conf 12.3 at SC 74. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair of the Working Group. So, Standing Committee, before us, we have the report of the Working Group, and I note, as the Chair has said, that the Working Group has not fully completed its mandate and will continue to work. However, they have arrived at some conclusions that they present to us for consideration, particularly in Annex 2, some proposed amendments to Resolution Conf 12.3. So I will open the floor first to members of the Standing Committee to see if you have any comments or reactions to the report of the Working Group and the draft amendments in Annex 2. It looks like the Standing Committee is fairly happy, so I will continue to seek interventions, and I will also now seek interventions from parties. And now we have another list. Okay, so I will start with New Zealand, followed by Indonesia, please.
Thank you, Chair. I want to firstly thank the working group for all its useful deliberations. This topic's of high interest in the Oceania region, and so we're very pleased to have this guidance being developed. I have one comment to make in regards to paragraph 13 of the document. This deals with electronic permit exchange guidelines for CITES permits. And it notes the current focus on bilateral point-to-point connections. And we really strongly support the ability to share across multiple countries, as enabling multiple parties to share CITES permit data will make the e-permit system even more effective. So while bilateral connections might be helpful in cases where two countries have significant trade between them, for us a much more useful model is to have exchange abilities between multiple management authorities. So we really strongly encourage consideration of this in the guidance too. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand. I will pass the floor to Indonesia, and after Indonesia will be followed by Costa Rica and then the EU.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This my speaker clear? Okay. Thank you. Indonesia, thanks Chair of the Working Group on the Electronic System and Information Technologies for providing the excellent report. Indonesia agrees to endorse the draft amendments of the resolution conference 12.3 on the permit and certificates as explained in Annex 2 in this document for the consideration of the COP19. The amendments are in line with what Indonesia is currently doing at the national level. Indonesia supports the continuation of this working group during this current intersessional period. We wish the working group also touch upon the strategy for facilitating the technical assistance, capacity building, and knowledge sharing activities to support parties, especially developing countries parties, in establishing and implementing the electronic system for permit and certificate issuance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Indonesia, for your support. I will now ask Costa Rica, and the Costa Rica will be followed by the EU and then Australia. Costa Rica, please.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta. Como esta es la
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. As it's the first time we're speaking, I'd like to thank the Secretariat for this enormous effort, and you, Madam Chair, for managing to hold the first virtual meeting of a standing committee. In document 18, we'd like to congratulate the working group on the excellent work and the proposal that's been made, because it is urgently needed that at the Conference of the Parties we manage to work after that with electronic means. And we are making every effort to be able to work towards being a pilot project. And we agree with New Zealand that we be able to follow all of those involved in the traceability, so that will help us to have real-time traceability necessary for all permits. We support this proposal and the proposal of the working group, and you can count on Costa Rica to continue contributing towards this. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Costa Rica. I see now a request from a standing committee member, so I have already accepted the EU. So EU, if you don't mind just pausing for a second, I will take Congo and then I will turn back to the EU.
That's fine.
Congo, please, you have the floor. EU, just stay online and wait for us.
Ok, merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On item 18, the Republic of Congo welcomes the tireless work carried out by the working group to look at the implementation of electronic systems and information technologies. The report that has been produced is one that we accept as presented by the Standing Committee, and we can support the revisions that have been suggested to the ResConf. The interpreter, apologize, the sound is disappearing. For most countries in the region, which are still using hard copies for CITES export permits, and we know that electronic format is something that is essential for us so that we can fight against illegal trade, So we support this on a global scale. We would also like to request that the Standing Committee take into account parties that have contracts with Europe and how the controls will be carried out. And it would be useful to make available to the parties a list and provide assistance with capacity building for countries that don't yet have enough of this. But we'd like to thank the working group and the Secretary General once more for this work.
Thank you, Congo. And I will now turn the floor to the EU. The EU will be followed by Australia and then the United States. EU, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The EU and its member states thank the chair and the members of the working group for the work done so far. I think we all recognize the value and the need to move forward with the use of electronic systems in this ever more digitalizing world. We therefore support the draft amendments to Resolution 12.30 Ref COP 18 on permits and certificates as outlined in Annex 2. And we also welcome the guidance on electronic signatures as presented in Annex 1. As our colleagues from New Zealand, we do want to stress that any future recommendations or guidelines should continue to reflect the different approaches that can be taken by parties and the need to cater for these alternative types of architectures when parties develop their electronic systems. Finally, we look forward to continue the discussions in the working group on the remaining elements of its extensive mandate. Thank you.
Thank you, European Union. So I will now pass the floor to Australia, followed by the United States. I note after there will be Thailand and Singapore. And at this time, while we take these 4 countries, if there are other parties or observers who wish to take the floor, I would ask you to identify yourselves now so that I can close my list. So Australia, please, you have the floor.
Oh, thank you very much, Chair. I hope you can hear me. We would like to thank everyone involved and appreciate the work of Switzerland, especially as Chair of the Working Group. Australia supports the proposed amendments to Resolution Conf 12.3 Rev COP 18 on permits and certificates contained in Annex 2 to the agenda document. We look forward to continuing to engage with the working group to consider how this resolution might better promote electronic permitting and modern border clearance processes, in particular through amendments to the requirements for physical endorsement of permits at 24F. Australia also intends to propose additional text to recognise the benefit of electronic permitting systems in supporting parties' effective implementation of the Convention. We will provide this text to the working group for consideration during the next intersessional period. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Australia. I give the floor now to the United States. United States will be followed by Thailand and Singapore. And seeing no more requests for the floor, I will close after Singapore. So the United States, please.
Thank you, Chair. The United States is a member of this working group and has valued the opportunity to work with our colleagues to innovate CITES systems to meet current and future needs. And at the same time, we're mindful to stay grounded in the text of the Convention. And while we do support noting the document and continuing the work of the working group, we had 2 points we wanted to raise to this committee. In Annex 2, paragraph 6, with regard to the signature space for the applicant in box 4 of the model permit, this reflects not only the practice for some parties and some types of documents, but it's also information that's included in Appendix 4 of the treaty itself. This grounding in box 4 has made us want to consider more fully before actually removing it. And we also believe that we could offer an alternative suggestion that might resolve some of the issues raised in the working group. And we'd like to be able for the working group to fully think about this suggestion before we take a decision here. And so to be clear, we're not wanting to debate this particular issue. We just want to not conclude it so that we could be sure that this is the best thing to do and that there is an alternative that doesn't implicate the actual text that's included in the treaty. Secondly, additional to that is that in Annex 2, paragraph 3, a clarification is needed in the new language proposed for subparagraph 3Q. The second "or" should be "and." This would read, "or in case of electronic permits and certificates, the names of the empowered persons and methodologies used to authenticate them." Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, United States. And so that I've caught that correctly, the United States is suggesting agreement with Annex 2 with the exception of the point paragraph 6, which would be returned to the working group for further discussion, and a revision in paragraph 3Q in the annex for the second "or" to be converted to an "and." So I will let members of the working group and the chair reflect on those to see if there's any comments. If I do not see requests for the floor on those, then I will assume those are agreeable, but I will turn as well to the members of the working group. So I had Thailand followed by Singapore. So Thailand, please.
Thailand would like to thank the chair of the working group to produce the informative document and would like to make a comment about to make a comment about the guidance in para 7 state that the countries who makes an electronic system should provide physical signature to the authenticate identification. I would like to recommend that the working group shall identify the time frame of this action due to the burden of the countries who do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Thailand. So I see you providing some guidance for the working group's further considerations. I have Singapore, please.
Madam Chair, thank you for allowing Singapore to take the floor. Singapore is a member of the Intersessional Working Group on Electronic Systems and Information Technologies. We would like to thank the chair of the working group for the comprehensive report and for leading the working group discussions constructively. Singapore supports the report by the working group. At the 18th Conference of Parties, Singapore informed the parties that to increase transparency and efficiency of permit issuance and control process to prevent fraudulent permits, Singapore will be implementing electronic signatures on CITES permits issued by Singapore. Singapore is glad to update that the use of electronic signatures has been implemented since September 2019. This is on top of the current watermark security feature of Singapore's permits and QR code on each permit containing information of the permit. We had also informed parties through a CITES notification published on 3rd October 2019. We look forward to continue the discussion and work on the electronic exchange of CITES permit data, and we would like to take the opportunity to thank the CITES Secretariat support for the working group. Thank you.
Thank you, Singapore. So I note the strong support for the work of this working group and for what they've presented. I note the comment from the United States suggesting the final point on deleting the space in box 4 dedicated to the signature perhaps merits a bit more conversation in the working group and the tweak in the language. I see that the chair, and so I will turn to the chair. I do see Chile has asked for the floor. I did close my speakers list, but I wonder if Chile, are you reacting to the proposals from the United States? So Chile, if you wish to take the floor, please do so. Okay, it seems to be a technical problem there, so I will turn to Switzerland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can react to the comments that have been made. First of all, I would like to thank all the parties expressing their strong support for the work that we have been doing. Concerning the concerns mentioned by New Zealand and the EU, the document, the guidance document on EPICS is a living document. It is obvious that in an electronic world, developments are fast and moving forward at a rapid rate. So at this stage, we have guidance for point-to-point connections, but it is of course the aim and also the idea to provide also guidance on hub solutions when several parties have a common hub that other parties can then connect to. So this is certainly a living document that will, as these new systems progress, will include the guidance on these systems as well. We will make sure that this happens. Concerning the comments from the US, I have received them beforehand, and I think the best way to go forward is to take that part back to the working group to have further this discussion to see how we can resolve the concerns. We still have time. We can do that for SC74. So I think we can go along those lines. Thank you.
Thank you, Switzerland, for those confirmations. And so I think that will be the conclusion of the Standing Committee on this item, in that the Standing Committee takes note of the present document, including noting your comment about the guidance being a living document. And we also agree to the proposals in Annex 2, with the exception of paragraph 6, which will be referred back to the working group for further consideration. And my understanding is we agree with the slight amendment from an or to an and in paragraph 3Q. So the Standing Committee agrees to the proposed amendments found in Annex 2, with the exception of paragraph 6, and with that slight tweak of or to and. Thank you very much. I am really saddened to say that we have reached the end of our 3-hour period. So we have not made up as much time as I had hoped, and we are quite behind. So I will be consulting with the Secretariat and determining how to approach our agenda for tomorrow, as I feel we will be challenged to meet all of these issues tomorrow. I do want to let the parties know that I intend to start tomorrow with the discussions that were anticipated for Friday. So this would be the implications of the pandemic, the arrangements of for the COP, and the future Standing Committee meetings and activities. I hope we will have a brief discussion on those, but for myself as chair, it is important for me to hear from you as parties and committee members and observers how to proceed in the next year or so as we approach the Conference of the Parties. Once we have concluded those items, I will turn back to the remaining items on our agenda. We have currently concluded item 18, and we will move on to item 19 on purpose codes. And I may have more announcements on other tweaks to the working program when I take stock of the remaining items we have and the remaining time we have. I want to thank you all for your active participation. I really appreciate all the insights I have heard, and I appreciate everyone's patience as we adjust to this format. I wish you all a good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good night, and I look forward to continuing our discussions tomorrow.